There is a man who worked as a janitor his entire life, earning minimum wage, never making more than $12,000 a year. And when he died, he left behind $8 million. There is another man who earned over $30 million during his professional sports career, had endorsement deals worth millions more, and today he's completely broke, working odd jobs just to survive. What separates these two men isn't intelligence, it isn't education, and it certainly isn't income. The difference is something far more profound, something that determines whether you'll build wealth or watch it slip through your fingers no matter how much you earn. This is why money isn't a mathematical problem. It's a psychological one. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of money, and what you are about to discover will fundamentally change how you think about wealth, spending, saving, and financial success. This isn't about tips and tricks. This is about understanding the invisible forces in your mind that control your financial destiny. Money is one of the most emotional subjects in human existence, yet we treat it as if it's purely mathematical. We create budgets, calculate compound interest, analyze investment returns, and optimize our portfolios, all while ignoring the fact that financial decisions are rarely made with spreadsheets and logic. They're made in the dark corners of our psychology, shaped by childhood memories, social pressures, fear, ego, and deeply embedded beliefs we don't even know we have. The janitor, an elderly man I mentioned, understood something about money that most people never grasp in their entire lifetime. He didn't need to earn millions to become a millionaire. He needed to understand his own behavior. The athlete, whose story mirrors dozens of professional players who gone bankrupt, had all the money in the world, but didn't understand the one thing that mattered most. That wealth isn't about what you earn, it's about what you keep, and keeping money requires mastering yourself. Let's start with a fundamental truth that most financial education completely ignores. Your relationship with money was formed before you could even spell the word. If you grew up in a household where money was scarce, where every purchase was accompanied by anxiety, where your parents fought about bills, and you learned that money equals stress, that programming is still running in your subconscious today. You might earn six figures now. You might have a comfortable life. But somewhere deep inside, there is a part of you that believes money will disappear, that you are always one disaster away from losing everything, and that belief will shape your decisions in ways you don't recognize. Conversely, if you grew up with abundance but watched your parents spend recklessly, never save, and live paycheck to paycheck despite a high income, you likely inherited a distorted relationship with consumption. You might equate spending with happiness, believe that money exists to be spent immediately, or feel uncomfortable when your bank account grows because saving feels foreign and wrong. Here is where it gets interesting. Two people can receive the exact same financial advice, the same investment strategy, the same budget plan, and one will become wealthy while the other remains broke. The difference isn't the information, it's the psychology. Consider the concept of delayed gratification, which has been studied extensively through experiments like the famous marshmallow test, where children were offered one marshmallow immediately or two marshmallows if they waited 15 minutes. The children who could delay gratification went on to have better life outcomes decades later, including higher financial success. But here is what most people miss. Delayed gratification isn't about willpower. It's about how you perceive time and future rewards. If you grew up in an unstable environment where promises were broken and the future was uncertain, your brain learned that immediate rewards are the only real rewards. Waiting means losing. This isn't a character flaw. It's a survival adaptation, and it will sabotage every financial goal you set until you recognize it and rewire it. Let me tell you about another psychological trap that destroys wealth: lifestyle inflation. There is a physician who spent 8 years in medical school, accumulated $200,000 in student debt, and finally started earning $300,000 a year. Within 2 years, she was living paycheck to paycheck. How does someone earning $300,000 a year have no savings? The answer is simple and devastating. As her income rose, so did her expenses. She moved to a luxury apartment because she deserved it after all those years of sacrifice. She bought a high-end car because doctors are expected to look successful. She started dining at expensive restaurants, taking lavish vacations, and purchasing designer clothes because everyone in her social circle did the same. Her income increased by $250,000, but her savings increased by zero because her lifestyle consumed every additional dollar. This is the hedonic treadmill applied to finances, and it's why income alone never determines wealth. Now contrast that with the janitor, an elderly man who died with $8 million. He drove a second-hand car, lived in a modest home, wore the same jacket for years, and bought his breakfast at the same diner every morning. People who knew him had no idea he was wealthy because he didn't look wealthy. He understood something profound. True wealth is invisible. Wealth is the money you don't spend, the cars you don't buy, the clothes you don't wear, the luxury you can afford but choose to delay. Wealth is hidden. It's the opposite of what we're taught to pursue. We're conditioned to display success through consumption, to signal status with possessions, to prove our worth through spending. But every dollar spent on signaling is a dollar that can't compound, can't grow, can't work for you while you sleep. Notice how none of this is about numbers. It's about behavior. He never cared about looking rich, so he became rich. The physician cared about looking successful, so despite earning millions over her career, she'll likely retire with far less wealth than the janitor, an elderly man who never made more than $12,000 a year. This brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in wealth psychology, the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is current income. Wealthy is hidden assets. Rich is visible. Wealthy is invisible. Rich is the luxury car in the driveway. Wealthy is the investment portfolio you never mention. You can be rich without being wealthy, which is why so many high-income professionals are secretly broke. And you can be wealthy without being rich, which is how janitors and teachers and librarians retire as millionaires while their neighbors wonder how they did it. The answer is always the same. They spent less than they earned, invested the difference, and repeated that behavior for decades. It sounds simple, almost deceptively simple, but the psychology required to execute that plan is extraordinarily complex because it demands that you resist social pressure, ignore comparisons, delay gratification, and maintain discipline through market crashes, emergencies, and every temptation the consumer economy throws at you. Let's talk about another psychological barrier, the illusion of control and the reality of luck. There is an entrepreneur who started a software company in the late 1990s, right before the dot-com boom. His timing was perfect, his product was decent, and when his company went public, he became a billionaire. He then spent the next 2 decades giving interviews about his genius, his work ethic, his strategy, and his secrets to success. He wrote a book, he spoke at conferences, he built an entire identity around being a self-made billionaire. Then his next 3 companies failed. His investments lost money, his advice stopped working. What happened? Was he suddenly stupid? Did he forget his own secrets? The answer is no. He wasn't stupid, and he didn't forget his secrets and success. He was simply a decent entrepreneur who got extraordinarily lucky with timing, and he confused luck with skill. This is a fundamental attribution error that destroys financial decision-making. When things go well, we attribute it to our brilliance. When things go poorly, we blame external factors. This makes us overconfident after success and helpless after failure, neither of which serves our financial future. The reality is that money outcomes are a combination of skill, effort, and luck, but the ratios vary wildly between individuals. Some people work incredibly hard and make smart decisions and stay poor because they were born in the wrong country, at the wrong time, to the wrong family. Others make mediocre decisions and become wealthy because they inherited money or were in the right place at the right moment. This isn't fair, but fairness is irrelevant. What matters is understanding that both success and failure are partially outside your control, which should make you humble in victory and resilient in defeat. The janitor, an elderly man who saved $8 million, had good luck. He lived in America during the greatest bull market in history. He stayed healthy enough to work for decades, and he died before spending his wealth. But he also made consistently good decisions within his circle of control. He saved, he invested in boring index funds, and he never panicked during downturns. He couldn't control the market, but he could control his behavior. And that's where psychology becomes the determining factor. Here is another truth about money psychology. Your financial decisions are heavily influenced by your reference point, and most people choose the wrong reference point. If you are earning $60,000 a year and your friends are earning $50,000, you feel successful. If you are earning $60,000 and your friends are earning $80,000, you feel like a failure, even though your objective situation hasn't changed. This is why social media is financially dangerous. You are constantly exposed to curated highlight reels of other people's lives, showing their vacations, their homes, their cars, their luxury, and your brain uses these images as reference points for comparison. Suddenly, your perfectly adequate life feels insufficient. You start spending money you don't have to keep up with a lifestyle that doesn't exist, chasing an image that's mostly debt and filters. The antidote is to choose your reference point carefully. Compare yourself to your past self, not to strangers on the internet. Measure progress by your own goals, not by someone else's curated performance. Let's address the fear and greed cycle that governs most financial behavior. When markets are rising, when everyone is making money, when your neighbor just doubled his investment in some new stock, greed takes over. You feel like you are missing out. You feel like you misread the opportunity. You jump in at the top, right before the crash. Then, when markets fall, when headlines scream about recession, when your portfolio drops 20%, fear takes over. You panic. You sell at the bottom, locking in losses. Then the market recovers without you, and you feel defeated all over again. This cycle repeats throughout your life, and every iteration costs you wealth. The solution isn't to eliminate fear and greed. They're hardwired into human psychology. The solution is to have a plan that accounts for these emotions. A plan you create when you are calm and rational. A plan you commit to following regardless of how you feel. Warren Buffett's famous advice to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful isn't about changing your emotions. It's about acting against them, which requires massive psychological strength. Here's the question that will reveal your money psychology. If you received $1 million tomorrow, tax-free, no strings attached, what would you do with it? Be honest. Would you immediately start planning purchases, thinking about the car you'd buy, the house you'd upgrade, the vacation you'd take? Or would your first thought be about preservation, about investing it, about how to turn $1 million into financial independence? Your gut reaction reveals whether you see money as something to spend or something to keep. Neither answer is morally wrong, but one leads to wealth and one leads back to where you started. The people who build lasting wealth see money as a tool for freedom, not for consumption. They're buying time, buying options, buying security, not stuff. The physician earning $300,000 a year was buying stuff. The janitor, an elderly man, earning $12,000 was buying freedom. Decades later, the janitor had freedom and the physician is still working to pay for stuff she bought to impress people she doesn't even like. Now let's talk about the most uncomfortable truth in wealth psychology. You probably don't actually want to be wealthy. You want to appear wealthy. You want the respect, the status, the admiration that comes with wealth. But true wealth requires invisibility, patience, and delayed gratification, which means giving up the very things you think you want. You can't drive the luxury car and maximize your investment returns. You can't live in the showcase home and build generational wealth. You can't vacation like a celebrity and retire early. These goals are in direct conflict, yet most people try to pursue both simultaneously and wonder why they're making no progress. The harsh reality is that you must choose. Do you want to look rich today or be wealthy tomorrow? Do you want the applause now or the security later? The janitor, an elderly man, chose security. He never got the applause. He never got the respect. People probably pitied him, this old man in his worn-out jacket, eating cheap breakfasts. But when he died, he had $8 million and the freedom to give it all to charity. The applause came after he was gone, which is too late to enjoy, but exactly the right time if your goal was wealth rather than performance. So what does all of this mean for you? It means that building wealth is far more about psychology than it is about mathematics. It means that your childhood, your fears, your ego, your social circle, and your ability to delay gratification will determine your financial future more than your income, your intelligence, or your education. It means that you need to understand yourself, recognize your biases, acknowledge your emotional triggers, and build systems that protect you from your own worst instincts. It means that wealth is simple but not easy, because simplicity requires discipline, and discipline requires psychological mastery. The formula hasn't changed in 1,000 years. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, be patient, and repeat. But executing that formula requires you to resist everything your brain is screaming at you to do, to ignore social pressure, to embrace invisibility, to find contentment in what you have while building what you want. Here is my challenge to you, and I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this. Think about your own money psychology. What beliefs about money did you inherit from your parents? What financial decisions are you making based on fear rather than strategy? Are you spending money to signal success or to build actual wealth? And most importantly, if you received that hypothetical $1 million tomorrow, what would you honestly do with it? And what does that answer reveal about your financial psychology? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Share your story. Tell me what resonated with you, what challenged you, or what you disagree with completely. These conversations matter because wealth psychology isn't taught in schools, isn't discussed at dinner tables, and remains one of the most powerful yet invisible forces shaping our lives. Remember this: money is a tool, but psychology is the hand that wields it. You can have all the tools in the world, all the investment accounts, all the financial knowledge, all the income, but if your psychology is broken, if your relationship with money is damaged, if your beliefs are working against you, those tools will slip through your fingers like water. The janitor, an elderly man with $8 million, didn't have better tools than you. He didn't have secret knowledge or lucky breaks or genius strategies. He simply had better psychology. He understood that wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you keep. He understood that true wealth is invisible. He understood that time, patience, and discipline compound just like money. And that understanding, that psychological framework, turned a minimum wage life into a multi-million-dollar legacy. The question isn't whether you can build wealth. The question is whether you can master the psychology required to do so. Your financial future isn't determined in the markets, the economy, or your paycheck. It's determined in your mind, in the quiet moments when you choose patience over instant gratification, invisibility over status, and security over applause. Master your psychology, and the money will follow. Ignore your psychology, and no amount of income will ever be enough.
Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you being here. If this video shifted your perspective, hit that like button. It helps this message reach more people who need financial clarity. Share it with someone who's serious about building real wealth, not just chasing income. And subscribe to master the psychology behind money and long-term success. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I read them. Wishing you clarity, confidence, and massive financial growth ahead. See you in the next video.